what you call the big story around the food FX ban and inflation. What does it all mean? What Mr. President says, his intentions, and where he wants to go. Let's get this conversation going on our commodities markets. Damilola Akimbami is a member of the research team and economic think tank at Financial Derivatives Company. Just a minute, everyone. Okay, so let's get this conversation. Damilola Akimbami is here. Thank you. It's good to have you in the studios.
Good morning, both.
Very interesting time with what we have on our radar.
Yes.
So let's, I'm sure you have what you call an action-packed burning economic issues, and I'm sure what Mr. President says was part of what, I'm sure you folks, as soon as the announcement was out and everybody got back on the desk yesterday, you guys tried to get really busy and unpack this for us. What's your take?
Okay, so we'll start with the burning economic issues, and I'll break it down into the global economic issues and the domestic economic issues, like you mentioned.
I like the local.
Yes, yeah.
It looks like a lot of in there for me.
Yes, so like you mentioned earlier, we saw yesterday that global stock markets declined yesterday, and they lost about 3%, and that's because of fears of a possible recession occurring. And also, we're aware of what President Trump said about delaying the tariff on some Chinese goods, such as electronics, laptops, phones, till December 15. So that we are seeing the global market a little bit uncertain in what is going on right now. And if you look at the domestic market, like you mentioned, our own president has sort of like given a directive to the central bank to restrict FOREX on food imports. So that definitely is a major game changer, which once it's implemented will impact on food inflation. And we're also seeing that in terms of the external balances in Nigeria, this was sort of like seeing a further deterioration of the external position. If you look at external reserves, they've lost about $530 million in just 1 month. Our external reserves are about $44.6 billion right now. And if you also look at the exchange rate, at the investor and exporter window, it's trading at 363, while the private market is trading at 360. And typically, it's supposed to be the other way around. So what we're seeing right now is that the spread between the investor and exporter window is actually widening right now compared to what it was 3 months ago in June, when it was actually negative and the private market was more expensive than the investor.
So some pressure coming through there.
Yes, so usually, like I said, typically we should see it the other way around, where the private market is more expensive. But now we're seeing that more trades are being carried out at the investor and exporter window compared to what's happening in the private market window. And also look at oil prices. That is, oil is Nigeria's #1 export. We've seen oil prices drop below $60 per barrel, trading at around $59 right now. And at the start of the quarter, oil prices were on average about $65. Now it's below 60. So that is a thing of concern that we need to watch out for. And tomorrow, the NBS is going to release Nigeria's July inflation numbers. And we at FDC were projecting a further decline to 10.98%.
Okay, if we try to just fast track those graphics to look at inflation and the food as a major component of our inflation metrics when we discuss all the whatever is in what is in the basket of our inflation. So food inflation, domestic inflation, and imported food inflation. You guys provided a very interesting table and chart there to give us a sense of that. If we just put that up from the production room and let everyone follow the conversation in terms of where we are and how do we balance this. Just explain this to us, Damilola. Try to break it down a little bit.
Okay, so the headline inflation, there are different components, or we call it sub-indices of the headline inflation. You have the food inflation, you have the core inflation. Now, core inflation is less seasonality, so for instance, less energy prices and what have you. And the food inflation basket actually carries a larger weight, and what we've seen in the past is that that has been trading above 10%, and while we've been seeing a decline in core inflation, food inflation has been stubbornly high at around 13.56%, which is what it is right now. And if you look at the chart that we provided, you see that there's been sort of like a decline, and then it picked up again to about...
In the first one?
Yes.
Yeah, that's imported food.
Yes, so there's imported,
domestic food inflation.
Exactly. So there's imported food inflation and there's domestic food inflation.
So the blue line represents
the blue line, exactly.
And the red represents domestic food inflation.
Exactly. And if you look at the chart that we prepared, you will see that the imported food inflation is actually higher than the normal domestic food inflation. If you look at it, the imported food inflation is about 15.38%, while domestic is 13.56%.
Yeah, that's toward the end of the chart. chart
Yes.
as you're tracking it. So it's a bit of a divergence. It looks like they were coming together somewhere
At a
in the
point,
middle.
yes, but
yes.
but it seems
Yes,
like
around
it's right.
April,
It's
yes, then they started diverging.
It seems like it's diverging
Yes,
now.
so domestic food inflation begins to taper down. That means we're producing more locally. That's what it means.
That's what it means. And again, this period is, we're gradually creeping into the harvest period. So definitely, once it's harvest, they obviously expect increased output, and that will feed favorably into the domestic food inflation. So you expect to see that taper down. And that's why we're projecting a further decline in domestic food inflation to 13.48%.
When the data is out tomorrow?
Yes, when the data is. But whereas imported inflation, we're actually projecting a slight increase to 15.4%.
From 15.38?
Yes, from 15.38.
Just about 0.2 or so.
Yeah, so it's actually marginal. Yes. But
so that's where you folks think that Mr. President is speaking to.
Yes, that's where he's speaking to. And if you listen to what he has said, he's saying that, oh, that we import too much, and some of these things that we import can be produced locally. But right now, it's unclear whether this ban is going to be a blanket restriction on all food imports.
Okay, so let's check in with the last bar chart there. Could you guys just bring that back for us? Using rice as the poster boy.
Yes.
We'll talk about imported food into Nigeria. Rice is number one.
Yes,
rice is king. Whether it comes through approved routes or food parts, whatever it is, or whatever. So that's the
chart.
The bar chart there. So that's the Nigeria and Benin Republic. I don't like the. I'm not sure I like the blues.
Yeah, so what the chart is telling us...
Not those blues. Those like sports, football shoes. Not that I don't like the blues.
So what the chart is telling us, like you mentioned, rice is one of Nigeria's main imports, and rice has been restricted, but you still see a lot of imported rice around, which just shows you smuggling. But over the years, we've actually seen a decline in rice imported in Nigeria. On the other hand, we've seen an increase in the rice being smuggled into Benin. So that just explains that whereas we are not seeing that much in the Nigerian market, are being smuggled out to Benin Republic. So, and that's what that chart is telling us. And right now, what the president is trying to achieve is, we have so many things that we can produce locally. Why not preserve our external reserves? Why not preserve our foreign exchange and focus on this? So also part of the diversification away from oil and focusing more on agricultural products.
I love data.
Yes.
That's the issue.
The data
just speaks to what Mr. President tries to explain it all to everyone.
Yes.
And I'm sure Mr. President has rice on his mind when
he
says
in fact,
no food.
rice imports have dropped significantly by at least over 60% since in the last 2-3 years. So at least the government is doing something.
I like good news. That's one good news. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Akimbami, a member of the economic think tank at Financial Derivatives Company. This is the biggest story that everyone's talking about, and that has to do with President Buhari's statement late Tuesday that he's asked the central bank to stop providing foreign exchange for food imports. That's the big story, and everyone is weighing in on this conversation that we raised the curtain on yesterday. This is what United Capital, one of the investment banks, one of the big ones on Broad Street, issued 3-paragraph investment notes suggesting what should be done and their understanding of what Mr. President says, the intentions and how we're likely going to move forward. I'm not going to bore you with the very heavy details, but just try to summarize. According to United Capital, research analyst says this move may be positive for local investors operating within food and agro-allied value chain. Also, FMCGs, that's the fast-moving consumer good companies with investments in backward integration programs to increase the local sourcing of inputs for their products may benefit. What's the recommendation? The federal government should ease doing business in Nigeria to increase local competitiveness, among other things. But let's break the conversation down. Yesterday, we had what you call the first word. Today, agriculture is synonymous with what you call food. So we're talking about food production, food security, food sustainability, and food sufficiency. They're all in the same basket. So let's ask Celestine Okeke, who is a lead partner at CEDI and, of course, a national coordinator for an agriculture advocacy program. Thank you so much, Celestine, for coming through. We appreciate your time.
Thank you, Watson. Good morning.
You spent most of your time yesterday on social media, on Twitter, reacting to some of the comments I made. If a lot of folks weighed in on what Mr. President said, and you took out time to explain what your understanding of this policy is all about. I don't want us to go through the effects and all of that side. Let's talk about agriculture. Mr. President wants food sufficiency, food sustainability, food security. Unpack this for us.
Okay, so if you're looking at food security, you need to bear something in mind. We have a global food security index that is measured across 113 countries. And in measuring the food security of nations, what they do is to look at affordability, availability, and quality and safety of the food. So in the first instance, they're measuring if food is available. If it's available, is it affordable? If it's affordable, does it have the quality and is it safe for consumption? That is the big picture of food security. But if you bring it down to Nigeria here, we need to first look at the issue of availability. How available is food staples that Nigerians consume in the majority of it? Then beyond the availability, how affordable is it? Is it affordable for Nigerians to purchase? Then if you go past the affordability, you then ask the question of, is it of a good quality and is it safe for consumption? And the score we had in the 2018 global ranking for food security is 98 from 113 countries. And it's simply because we scored very low scores on these three metrics: availability, affordability, and quality. And we're 96 from 113 countries. And in Nigeria, we spend 56.4% of our incomes on food consumed at home. Now, why is this the situation in Nigeria? The challenge we have, and I keep saying it, is food production is not at the peak that it needs to be. Our yield per hectare for almost all crops is low. And what yield per hectare simply means is if you plant maize in 1 hectare of land, what quantity are you harvesting from that hectare of land? Because that is what will determine the price to which you will sell. It will determine whether food will be available and affordable for people to purchase. Our yield per hectare has remained on has been almost static for a number of years and has not improved. Take maize, for instance. We are doing less than 5-6 metric tons per hectare for maize, whereas Ghana is doing above between 8 to 10 metric tons. What it then gives is, for instance, in 2015 planting season, imported maize, the landing cost into Nigeria was 120,000 per metric ton. But for the locally produced maize, it was going for 180,000 per metric ton. So if we were forced to buy the locally produced maize variant in Nigeria as of 2015, we would have been buying it for 60,000 more than the cost for the imported one. So the bigger picture is we need to look at how we develop the agricultural sector in Nigeria to improve productivity for our farmers. Not in terms of total production volume, but no, if somebody who is planting maize plants on 1 hectare, what would the person get in return for planting maize in 1 hectare? Because it will ultimately define the availability, the affordability, and safety for the food that will be sold in Nigeria.
Celestine, I'm sure, I want to believe that we all got Mr. President's statement correct, part of which was tweeted by Garbashew, the senior special advisor to the president on media and all of that, and as reported widely, was that Mr. President says that Nigeria now has food sufficiency. Is that actually correct, based on what we have on the ground?
Which is why I read out the data from Global Food Security Index. It's done by the Economics Intelligence Unit. And for the 2018 ranking, Nigeria came 96 from a total of 113 countries. So we're almost near the bottom. So in essence, they're saying when they ranked 113 countries across the world, Nigeria was the 96th by a ranking. And one of the factors is that we spend over 50% of our household income on food consumed at home. The key word here is food consumed at home. They didn't even measure the food you eat outside, you consume outside. So Nigeria is not a food secure country. Even in Africa, I had cause to put out a ranking that was done some few months before the statement. In Africa, Nigeria is not in the top 10 of food secure countries. And like I said, they measured about 28 indicators, and they are looking at 3 major metrics. One is the availability, the affordability, the quality and safety of that food. And I also went to tell you also that in 2015, imported maize into Nigeria was coming for 120,000 per metric ton. The locally produced one was going for 180,000 per metric ton. So if we had forced Nigerians not to bring in or if we had closed import by any means and we were forced to all buy the locally produced one, you would have imagined Nigeria struggling to buy it for 180,000 per metric ton. So by the Global Food Security Index ranking, Nigeria is not food secure. We're around 96 out of 113 countries. And by the measure of what we spend on food consumed at the house level, at home, we are spending 56.4% of our income. So if you earn 100,000, you're spending like 56,000 just for food alone. So if you look at the availability, the affordability, and the quality and safety of the food consumed, going by the Global Food Security Index, Nigeria is 96 of 113 countries, and we're not food secure.
So when Mr. President says he does not want the central bank to give foreign exchange to those who want to do food imports, what do you think Mr. President actually meant?
Okay, Mr. President has made his statement. I had looked forward to seeing an official release from the central bank saying this is what we had discussed with Mr. President and this is the position of the Central Bank of Nigeria. That has not happened. What I have seen is a press item from I think the cable newspaper, online newspaper, stating that the central bank, from inside says the central bank wants to do a phased implementation of the policy. If you ask me, we are spending so much on importing food. We shouldn't be spending so much to import food. But then why are we spending so much to import food? Why are we doing that? The factors that should aid productivity in Nigeria are near absent. So what I will advise that we do as a country, I won't say Mr. President because Nigeria belongs to us all. What I will advise we should do as a country is to come back to the drawing board and say, why have all the interventions we have done in the last decade, let's even say the last decade, why has it not translated to improve yield for our smallholder farmers? And let's also bear in mind that from the MBS survey for MSMEs released some 3 or 4 weeks back, it gave us a worrying trend, which we discussed here also. In the small and medium sector space for MSMEs, we have very few agri-sector players. It's in the micro space that you have almost everybody who is farming in Nigeria is in the micro space. That also collaborates the statistics from UNDP and from the FAO that states that 80% of the food consumed in Nigeria are produced by smallholder farmers. And unfortunately, these farmers are farming on less than 1 hectare of land. So we need to address these dynamics. How can we get our farmers to move from less than 1 hectare to 1 hectare, progressively to 5 or 6, 7, 8, 10 hectares? And how will their productivity be increased so that whatever they produce will at least meet the price for what is produced from Ghana and other African countries, not even talking from the Western countries and the rest. Mr. President should bring in, he has promised us he's going to bring in a seasoned expert in the agri sector. We're waiting for that to happen. And also, we need to also understand that our agricultural promotion policy, which is the policy we're running with at this time for the agri sector, is due for review. It's a 4-year policy that was launched in 2016. By 2019, we should have a new policy, and this is already August, when we will start to look at what we were able to achieve with the APP and plan for the new policy we would have. If it's a review or a brand new policy, we need to begin those works now so that these things that have held down our smallholder farmers in Nigeria, we don't continue to hold them down going forward.
Part of what Garba Shehu tweeted yesterday being attributed to Mr. President on Tuesday evening was that the Mr. President says he was particularly delighted that young Nigerians, including graduates, had started exploring agribusiness and entrepreneurship, with many posting testimonies of good returns on their investments.
Okay, so in respect to that, we had an event in May, I think May 14th or thereabouts. We brought in young persons in agri in Abuja here, and we had some conversations with them. Yes, a good number of Nigerians are taking to agribusiness. But then they are still meeting the same challenge that their fathers, their uncles, their aunties are facing in the business. And we asked the question, what is the deliberate government policy supporting youth in agri? Is there a deliberate policy supporting youth in agri? If I'm a youth, for instance, in Osun State, in the town called Ikiref in Osun State, and I want to do agri, is there a place I can go online and find the kind of information that would support me to know what to do and how to do that? So youth, you could have, and I also attest to the fact that a couple of youth who have had training from development organizations, had training from other private sector organizations are doing well. But then the question is this, what is the number of these youths? What is their percentage in terms of looking at the entire smallholder farmer population in Nigeria, what are they able to contribute? So government needs to, since youths are beginning to take to agric, I wouldn't know why they're taking, and I wouldn't want to counter the reason why they say they're taking to agric, but it's a good indication, it's a good sign. So the next phase will be, let's have a deliberate policy for youth in agric, make things a lot easier for them. Things like access to land, access to basic input, access to finance, and access to training. Let's make it easier for them to get, so that if a youth takes to agric in the community and he makes profit out of it, he will then be able to attract more youth into agric. But if he goes into agric and has the same challenge, and a couple of days back, a young man in, I think, Lagos State or so, not the Lagos State, Ogun State or your state, put out a picture of cattle got into his farm and ate up his crop. Now, you can imagine what that will send out to youth who want to do agric. Some other persons have battled with climate change. In Anambra State, they are being forced to harvest their yam earlier than they should harvest because rain started earlier and it's falling on an intensity they cannot cope with. If youth see this happening in their community, how would they react to such mishap? So government needs to bring out, since Nigerian youth are now taking to agric at a number we have not seen before, that is the reality. Government needs to also respond and provide support structure that will enable them to sustain whatever they are doing. They shouldn't go through the same challenges our forefathers, our brothers, our uncles, our dad have gone through and are going through.
Interesting what you've described, experiences and lessons on the field of what folks are facing. A quick one. Did Mr. President's statement come to you as a surprise? Considering the fact that, I'm sure if you listen to Godwin Emefiele, the central bank chief, over the last months and 1 year or so, he's been very consistent about food import in terms of using FX. He's been very vitriolic, very front on everybody's face and saying, look, sometimes getting a little bit upset when folks try to defend how much we spend and why we should keep the doors open as far as import is concerned. So are you surprised that Mr. President says he has directed the central bank not to give a dime to anyone who wants to use official money to foreign exchange to bring food into the country?
Yeah, to some extent, I was surprised, and I'm still surprised. And I'll give you two reasons why I am surprised. The first one is, this is a policy that should have been carefully thought out and would have had a stakeholder engagement over a period of time. And then you would have your CBN, maybe your Ministry of Finance or Trade and Investment coming out to not only issue the statement that will stop giving FX for food import, but to say we are coming up with a policy which will be a 12-month or a 24-month policy to help us support and develop the agri sector, after which or within which we will stop doing FX for food import. But since it's just an official statement from Mr. President now, and CBN has not given us any other statement outside of that, there is a lot of confusion on what is going to happen and how will it happen. Now, my concern also, my surprise also is that we're in the middle of transiting from an agri policy to another one. We have not taken that assignment very seriously. We have not delivered on are we doing a review of the APP, or are we launching a new policy intervention for the agri sector? Because as a matter of fact, that is the overarching agri policy in Nigeria. If we have not addressed that question to say, we either want to review the APP or to start a new policy intervention. And part of the policy intervention for agri is to stop FX for food import. And then the policy document will also speak to how we would support our smallholder farmers to take up the challenge and increase their production. The ban might just be, if you ask me, will not address the issue we have. And like I said also, we have to stop to a large extent giving FS for import because the FS is scarce. We are paying so much to do that. But then we need to go back and say, what is the best fit approach? What is the best fit approach for doing this? Is it by mere stopping the FS, wake up today and stop it tomorrow and say no more FS for food import? Or is it by a deliberate approach to first develop the sector, not 100%, but start a deliberate plan to grow the sector, after which you can then say 3 months from now, 4 months from now, we'll stop FS for food import. Because as it stands now, we can't compete with countries like Ghana for food. We can't. We're not competing with Ghana for food. So if you do FS ban completely, what will be the impact of? I remember that the food security index is measured by availability, affordability, and safety. How would this food be available in the first instance, seeing that our yield is poor? And because our yield is poor, farmers are forced to sell at high prices. Will it then be affordable for Nigerians to buy? So let's first have an agri policy that is long-term focused, that has the ability to transform the sector, and then we'll say a component of it is that FS for food import will stop over a period of time.
Okay, so who should lead this? Mr. President, as the CEO, has made his mind known. It's left for the rest of us to make it work for Mr. President. And I think the consensus out there is that Nigeria needs food sufficiency, we need food security, and we need to do backward integration and all. I think we all agree on those principles or pillars, as it were. But how do we make it work? Who should lead this? Mr. President spoke about the central bank. Who else should be around the table in this room to get this work? And how soon do you think we should hit the ground running on this? Celestine?
The challenge is principally that of the Ministry of Agric. CBN does financial intervention. It doesn't do policy for the agri sector. It's principally a challenge of the Ministry of Agric. And like I said, I had said this some time ago, I think on this same platform here, to say, look, once Mr. President was sworn in May 29, one of the things he would have quickly done was to say, look, ministers for agric, ministers for finance, ministers for education, and ministers for trade and investment, you announce such portfolios first in your first 1 week of being sworn into office, and then say, look, I'm setting you out to go work out a new policy or to review the policy. We have to see whether it's still functional for us. So it's the challenge of the Ministry of Agric. But there's a big problem we need to also look at. At the Ministry of Agric, it has been discussed severally. There's a challenge of institutional capacity. And I will explain it in a bit here. You go take somebody from Ministry of Health, you transfer him to Ministry of Agric to head the policy department, for instance. Or you take somebody from Ministry of Works, you transfer him to Ministry of Agric to head the input supply department. Or you take somebody from Ministry of Environment and you transfer him to Agric to head the Essential Services department. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. And it won't work if we continue to do that. If we, at a point in time as a country, thought it was fit to create a cadre called procurement officers, the ministry, department, and agencies, and we train them to be procurement officers. We should also get to that point where we would say, from the rank of assistant director in the Ministry of Agric for any of the departments, you must have undergone basic training, basic knowledge transfer would have been given to you to be able to function in that ministry. Because what we have now is a big challenge of institutional capacity. When the next minister comes in, and he comes with his aides, who will be experts in the sector, well, the next thing that happens is you now have this power play between the directors and the aides of the minister. And you see the directors tell you, look, these policies are being packaged by the aides of the minister. We didn't play a role in doing this policy, and because we didn't play a role, we can't implement it. So a program runs for 3 years, going to the 4th year. We can't tell this is the tangible result we've got from it. So Mr. President needs to look at the Ministry of Agric and restructure it to be able to deliver the common good for us. And the ministry will be able to stand up and take the challenge. In 2019, heading to 2020, we shouldn't be talking about access to seed, to agricultural seed. This is still a big challenge. We shouldn't be discussing such issues in this time.
Thank you so much for your time today. Celestine Okeke, lead partner at CEEDI. We thank you and do have a great day.